Hey there. Welcome to the Camden Famous podcast. I'm your host, April Shaw Bodwin. Whether you're a local, a seasonal visitor, or just curious about Mid-Coast Maine, you're in the right spot. We dive into the stories behind the must-visit places, from cozy eateries and unique shops to can't-miss attractions. For more insights and to join our community, check out our website at camdenfamous.com or follow us on Instagram at camdenfamous. Let's explore the best of Mid-Coast Maine together. The Camden Famous podcast is brought to you by The Wharf at Lyman Morse. The Wharf is a beautiful waterfront destination on the sunny side of Camden Harbor. The Wharf at Lyman Morse offers a one-of-a-kind dining, shopping, and lodging experience. Plus, don't miss the sunset over Camden Harbor from the Salt Wharf, their rooftop restaurant and bar. Visit thewharfcamden.com. That's the WHARF Camden.com to start your adventure today. So today we're here with Meg Quijano, the owner of the Smiling Cow, and she is joined by her daughter, Lisa Utman-Randall, who helps out at the store, and she's also the copywriter for our Camden Famous coffee table book that's coming out this summer. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, April.
Thanks. We're happy to be here.
We're so excited to have you on. I thought a great place for us to start is tell us the origin story, because the Smiling Cow is one of the oldest stores in Camden, right?
Yes, actually, I think it may be the oldest store now. And with the same family ownership, which is pretty terrific. My grandmother, back in 1929, opened the original Smiling Cow. And it was a matter of necessity. She had 5 children and needed a source of income. And they had always summered in Maine and decided, I think this would be a great place to have a store. So they decided to open the store. It was all Maine products. And all of the 5 children worked there, my mother included. And in 1940, my parents opened the Smiling Cow here in Camden with the blessing of my grandmother. And I want to say that, I am the 3rd generation.
Yeah.
Lisa is the 4th. There are other 5th generation members of the family. And we have no idea how it's going on forward, but it's amazing that the way I think of it as generations of women running a business, and not that there wasn't help with my father, my husband, but it really is a women's generational story.
Yeah.
And I feel so fortunate to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Grew up working in the Smiling Cow, of course, until I was old enough to get a real job away from the family business, and left Maine for a number of years. Came back, and it was at a very good time because my parents were ready to be finished. They had been doing it for a lot of years. And I became the next person to be at the helm of the Smiling Cow. And it was a great place to raise my children as well.
Lisa, are some of your earliest memories, do they include being at the Smiling Cow?
Oh, definitely. I remember coming down when I was a kid and standing behind the cash register, and it was so exciting. And then my children did the same thing. My daughter, Elena, would always say, I want to go play cash register. But I would come down and spend time with my grandparents, and my grandfather and I would always go off. There was a coffee shop in Camden called the Red Baron back then, and we would go, and he would get his coffee and I would get my hot chocolate. And I remember walking down the street with him and him knowing everybody in town and everybody saying hello and having that affiliation with something that even back then was such a mainstay on Main Street, and just feeling really part of a community. And then, of course, when we moved back here, I was 10 maybe, and started working in the store and worked there as a young teenager, and also then went on to get my own real job in a local restaurant and not work at the Smiling Cow. But it's a huge part of our family. It's a huge part of how I view my mother I also see this, what you were saying, Mom, about these generations of women, these three strong women. I think of my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother. And not only did they run the store, but they have run it so successfully. It's really just such an incredibly important part of the town and also our family.
And I think when we talked last summer, Meg, you said the business keeps growing each year. Like more and more people are coming in year after year after year.
I know. Isn't that incredible?
It is incredible.
How does it keep growing?
Where are they coming from?
Yeah, no, we're very fortunate, but also I feel like I had great mentors. I was taught how to do things. I remember the first time that I went on a buying trip with my mother, and she's buying things by the dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, whatever. And I'm saying, Mom, I don't even like those. Why are you buying them? And she said, it's not about what you like. It's about what the customer will like. And that was a great lesson for me. I can still have the products in the store that I do like. And I try to get as many Maine products as I can, which is, I think, very important. But it's to encompass everybody's tastes and wishes.
And I think we talked last summer and you said you try to have something kind of for every price point.
Yes,
every
definitely.
person can come into the store and find something. Yeah.
Yes. And if they don't find anything that they want to buy right then, they can walk out onto the back porch and look at the most beautiful view that you can imagine, standing on our deck, looking at the waterfall going down into the harbor. And Camden has one of the most beautiful harbors I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, that we went in and you have all those beautiful flowers back there, and then the yachts are sailing in and the sailboats and the schooners are going out. It's a piece of heaven.
Yes, it definitely is.
And it's amazing to listen to people when you're working at the cash register and working in the front of the store, and you hear people and they get to the back of the store and they see the doorway and they go out and they're, I mean, people are just really amazed. And then they come back in and they say, how is the waterfall right back there? And we explain to them that we're actually sitting on top of a river. And so I think that people, not only are they in this great store, but they get a real sense of the downtown and they see a little bit more of a perspective about, this, how we're connected to the river coming through and the falls and the harbor. It's really cool.
It is really cool.
And it's great for us because oftentimes as I'm sitting at my desk in my office upstairs, and as Lisa said, listening to all of the oohs and ahs when people first see that amazing sight, that I get a new appreciation for it. And I say, I've got to stop, take a couple of minutes and look out at the harbor. It's a great meditation kind of bit too. So.
Well, and we get to take photographs of people.
Yes,
Constantly,
we do.
and we're so happy to do it because, like you said, we get to then see it through their eyes, and it's a really amazing thing for a lot of people who have never been in a town like Camden.
What would you say, Meg, has been the biggest shift you've seen? So how long have you been running the store? Is it 40 plus years?
44 years.
44 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It might be too hard of a question. We might have to be more specific.
It's gone very fast. There's an influx of people that are passing through, seeing Camden for the first time, and almost always become repeat visitors to the area. But when my parents first opened the business in Camden, their customers were not tourists per se. They weren't day trippers. They were people that came for the summer. They were families that had homes, or as they called them then, the summer cottages, which were rather large. And that was their customer base. And so they would charge things all summer. This was before credit cards or anything like that, but they would have charges going. And at the end of the summer, they would pay their charge bills before they left. And that was when we had all this money. It was great. My father always said, in Maine, you're kind of spring poor because so much of our businesses depend on summer trade. So you get the money back in, you pay all your bills, and then you wait for spring to come so you can start all over again.
I'm amazed by how many people from countries all over the world come into the store. Has that always been the case?
No, I mean, because people didn't travel back then like they do now. I would say, yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, Canadians, yes, we've always had quite a group of Canadian visitors, but from Europe and other places.
Well, didn't we used to take Canadian currency?
We did.
Oh,
And you
really?
had to,
I remember that, the little sheet with the
you had to figure out what the exchange rate was. Oh my gosh. And we didn't have like little computers that we could
Type
run
it
around
into.
with. Yeah. So it was,
Oh, here's a big change. When I first started working at the Smiling Cow, there was a cash register that had a crank handle.
Wow.
And you would key in the amount, and then you'd have to crank the handle.
Wow.
I'd actually forgotten about that. Wow, is right.
It did not count the change back for you.
No, it didn't. And that's another thing, I mean, everything
Wow.
is more automated, which is helpful.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have a back and forth with the customer. And you get that by being pretty basic about how you run their sales, and I think they appreciate that.
How many products do you think you have in the store? There's a lot.
Oh, yeah. It's so full. I don't even know where to put it all right now as we get ready to reopen, but thousands and thousands,
Yeah. We've talked in the past, and you have described the Smiling Cow almost as a mini department store because you do have so many different products that cater to not only every price point, but every age in your store.
Yes, that has always been the case in the Smiling Cow. I can remember as a kid, oh, yes, there's a toy section, yippee. So the kids can run to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then
And they do run.
And they do run, yes. And then there's jewelry, and then there's apparel, there's cards. It's interesting because even though cards are less expensive than some of the items in our store, I think it's a good draw. It brings people in because they can't find unique cards. So I'm happy to give up that space. I recently had a fellow shop owner say to me, that's really valuable space that you're using up with cards. And I said, it's valuable, yes, because it really does help people to come in, and they come in for a card and then they end up buying other things too. So I think it's really important.
And they're funny. That's one
And they
thing.
are funny,
Yes. You have a lot of merchandise in your store that makes people laugh.
Yes. Oh, and that's another thing that is so much fun and a great icebreaker also with customers. We'll hear them laughing at the coasters we have in the back, and we're going, oh my gosh, isn't that funny? And as many times as we've heard it, we can still laugh at it. So.
Well, and I think that brings people who are shopping together. A lot of times it's families, other times it's friends who are visiting together. And you'll see groups of 2 or 3 people, and they'll be over by the cards or the magnets or the napkins, and they're laughing together. And so they're they're shopping, but they're having a really beautiful experience together. And I think that that's a huge part of what is so wonderful about the store, about the Smiling Cow, is people have, it's not just going to a store and finding some things you like. You are having a meaningful interaction with the people that you're vacationing with or your family.
That is beautifully put.
Yeah.
And yeah, it accurately sums it up. So we've talked about some of the different ways how business has changed, like the trends have changed, the customers coming in have changed. Do you anticipate any sort of change this summer where you're like, okay, based on the last couple of years, we're forecasting this?
That's an interesting question, because whenever somebody asks me, how do you think the season will be? I go, I think it's going to be great. And it is. It just is. And we've had some that have gone up astronomically from the previous year, and some that have just been, kind of even with the previous years. But they're always great. So I'm never disappointed.
That's a great answer. Is there anything that you were surprised by working? You were more in the store last summer than usual. Is that true, Lisa?
I haven't really worked there since I was probably a teenager, not for real. I was surprised mostly by how hard my mother works.
Yeah.
I knew that. I've always seen her work, and she's so busy in the summer, and I'm used to that, coming up and visiting. But being in there and seeing all the parts that you keep in your head, Mom, and all the managing that you do, and all that you know about every product and every person, and you remember the prices, and even just setting up the store to open in the end of April, and it's every 2 minutes, Meg, and now I'm there, so it's Meg, Mom, constantly asking you questions. You are. I always knew it, but we were walking up the street one day getting a cup of coffee or tea at Zoot, and I remember looking at you, or maybe we were going shopping at Leonard's, and I looked at you and I said, I just need to tell you something. And you said, what? And I said, you are an absolutely amazing business person. And you kind of shrugged it off a little bit. And I said, no, I'm watching you, and it's incredible. And you're so nice to the customers and your staff. Everybody comes back year after year to work there because you are an amazing boss.
Well, now I have some tears in my eyes, but thank you, Lisa. I felt that way about my mom too, which is great. And she probably felt the same about her mother. Although there was an interesting story. My mother said when she was younger and she was working in the Smiling Cow, and her mother walked by. Her mother, I didn't really know her, my grandmother, but she sounded like an amazing woman and very kooky and kind of unusual. And she wasn't a people person as far as customer service went. So she'd be walking through the store and a customer would say, oh, can you tell me where these balsam pillows come from? And my grandmother would say, that's not my department. And off she would walk, and my mother would go running up and say, oh, well, we make them right here, and kind of smooth the feathers a little bit. But so we all have a different way of approaching our customers. I think that my mother was the best salesperson I've ever known in my life, and kind and lovely. And she was a lovely woman. And
she really was.
Yeah. So I try to get some of that from her, and I got my father's great sense of humor. Oh, I sound like I'm praising myself now, but
you do.
But I from both of them, I got the gist of the store. I realized what it needed. It needed a front man like my father was, and it needed a follow-up person like my mother was. And I kind of tried to incorporate both of that into what I do.
And you do the bookkeeping.
And I do the bookkeeping. I actually like doing bookkeeping. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
That's great. So one of the questions that I always ask on every episode is for the business owner to share what they love most about being in business in Midcoast Maine, because it's such a special place. And I love to hear from people firsthand what it is to them that's so special.
It is a very special place, and I feel so incredibly fortunate to be in this particular place in Camden. I think it is just so beautiful. Not just beautiful, but there's something about, my father always said, there's a magic in Maine, and you either see it or you don't, but I think most people do, and they come and they love it. But Camden is... I love the idea of a small town. All the business people know each other. And there's a good camaraderie, honestly, for the most part in town. And it's just, as Lisa was talking about before, when she was with my father, and he would say, the people that were greeting him were saying, hi, Henry, and everybody knew him. I felt that when I came back to Maine, and the kids and I were riding bikes one day around the Belted Galloways, and all of a sudden cars were going by, and people were waving, and people were yelling out, "Hey, Meg!" And I went, "This is great. This is where I want to be." It just feels, well, it is home. I grew up in Rockport, and it just is a great place to be and to have a business. And I do get to close for a few months in the winter, and that, recharges the batteries so I can get ready for the next season.
Because you're open 7 days a week in the summer.
Yeah.
which is intense. That's a lot
It is,
to maintain.
It is. And I wanted to mention also and add on to what Lisa said about my staff, because I have some people that have been working there for many, many years. They're the most loyal, devoted, conscientious, fun group of people that I know. And I feel so incredibly fortunate to have them.
That's beautiful. And I don't want this question to go without talking to Lisa. So she's worked with me and Marina French, who's the photographer for our Camden Famous coffee table book, which will be for sale at the Smiling Cow this summer. You have been working with me in Mid-Coast Maine, especially in Camden, a little bit in Lincolnville with Dots. They'll be in the book too. And you grew up here, so you knew a lot of people, and you also met some people. And what was kind of a special moment for you as you were working on the book and getting to talk to people and interviewing them?
Well, it was certainly special interviewing my mom and having that conversation that we had this winter. And, you hear the stories of your family over and over, but to really listen was amazing. You just don't have any idea when you walk into, I've been going to French and Braun since I was a kid, when my grandmother had a charge there and our family. And when you would go on vacation, my brother and I would get to charge all our food down there, which was mostly Captain Crunch and candy. But being able to sit with people and really listen to their story and ask a question and then just sit back and hear what they had to say, it just brought me such a much deeper appreciation of this town. I've always loved it here, but for many, many years, I've just come and spent part of the summer here and haven't been living here, like I did when I was growing up. And there is that camaraderie with the businesses that I think is really unique and really special. And it's also very heartening. My career's been in the arts, and to see the galleries and the sort of artsy stores that are here has been really eye-opening for me. And to see that arts community that is very, very engaged here, going to the library and talking to her about how they're connected to Colin Page and his gallery, and they do the art walk and the all those other great events. And I didn't know there was so much going on in Camden, even in the winter. It used to kind of shut down in the winter. We would joke about skiing down Main Street in the middle of a storm, and that really happened. But now it's always been, I think, a beautiful and vibrant community. But I think with the advent of people many years ago being able to work from their phones and from their computers, it's just, I think people who are creative and interesting are attracted to places like this right on the water. And there's, with the Camden Conference and the Film Festival and all those great events, there's just more and more reason for people to be here. So I think that's it. I think it's just how vibrant and connected this town is.
You can see why I asked Lisa to be the copywriter. She has a beautiful way of putting things, and I'm so excited to launch this book with her. Are you excited to read it?
I'm very excited. I can't wait. I think that's a great thing you're doing for the community. I think that's terrific for all of us. I remember I was just thinking about when we were talking about the changes that have gone on in town, when you were mentioning about all the art galleries, which have been such an asset to the town. When my parents first opened the Smiling Cow, there was one other gift shop, and
wow.
And the two elderly ladies that ran it came down to speak with my father, and they said, "There's not room for more than one gift shop in Camden." And he went, "Okay, we'll see what happens." And look what happened.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Last gift shop standing.
Yes.
Before we wrap up today, can you share what the Smiling Cow is famous for?
I think we're famous for the back porch. I think that is probably the thing that most people say, "Oh, have you been to the Smiling Cow? They have this amazing back porch with a view that you won't believe." And I think that probably draws people in. And then when they come in, hopefully they feel comfortable and want to come back just to be at the Smiling Cow.
Yeah. That's a great answer. Do you have anything to add, Lisa?
Well, I think we touched on it a little bit a few minutes ago, just that there is something for everybody. It is a really fun place to shop.
And I would add, you have great Camden apparel. I remember visiting here years ago, and I was like, I want something that says Camden on it that I can go back to New Hampshire and wear and feel connected to this space. And you were one of the only places that I was like, oh, look at all these sweatshirts. I have so many designs to choose from, and they're all so soft. So people who want to take home a piece of merchandise to wear, I think they should stop at the Smiling Cow.
And that's another very big change in marketing in the gift business in Maine. When my mother and I one time were approached, this was probably back in the mid-'70s, by a sales rep who said, I have T-shirts here and they say Maine on them. And we went, oh, really? And we thought, why would we want that? They said, well, people are really kind of liking that kind of souvenir. And we said, all right, we'll try. We'll take 3 designs, give us a dozen of each, and that's it. And wow, that was the beginning of
60 or 80 T-shirts.
Yes, at least.
And they're great T-shirts.
And they are.
They're
are.
very cool. Yeah. I have one other thing to add about what the Smiling Cow is famous for: fudge.
Oh,
Ooh,
yes. Right.
Yes.
Store-made fudge. People get very excited.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
And it's made right there by Andy.
Right. So for people who want to find you, can you tell us your physical address and where people can find you online if they want to check out the Smiling Cow?
So we are at 41 Main Street in Camden. The new amazing website created by the people sitting across from us right now, Buck and April of Omnitizing, is smilingcow.com. And we're on Instagram at The Smiling Cow. And we try to have a little bit of fun with Instagram. You'll see lots of pictures of my amazing parents and some fun stuff and little quick updates. And Facebook.
And Facebook too. Yes, that's great. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, April. It was fun.
Thanks for listening. To learn even more about what makes Midcoast Maine so special, visit our website at camdenfamous.com or head over to Instagram where you can find us at Camden Famous.